Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in and watching. I'm Fred Gonzalez, and I'm here with my sidekick chef Jimmy and his doctor Don Picot. And today we're going to talk about how America is just essentially eating itself to death during the worst possible time of the COVID-19 epidemic pandemic. We have some great, interesting facts. You guys really need to listen in and just take a listen. If you have any questions, please subscribe and like down below, and we'll get back to you when we can. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Don Picot and Chef Jimmy. Go ahead, guys.
What's up? This is Chef Jimmy, and I'm down here in Fort Myers with Fred and Dawn. And what I do down here is I'm a personal chef, but on the side I cover and have studied metabolic diseases for about 10 years now. And the reason I started studying metabolic disease is because I was very interested in what's the greatest financial cost in this country and what is the greatest epidemic in this country. It's certainly not COVID, but it's called metabolic syndrome. And metabolic syndrome is essentially what we see here. It's syndrome X, it's an insulin resistance, it's a multifactorial syndrome with multiple risk factors. Remember, it's a syndrome, not a disease. Okay? So it arises from insulin resistance, accompanied by abnormal adipose deposition and function. Essentially, in my eyes, it's a mitochondrial overload. So essentially, the mitochondrial is your engine. So let's say you're a Lamborghini, right? You need to fuel that mitochondria with good oil, good gas, etc., etc. So putting, good foods, good sleep, positive attitude into your body is what fuels that mitochondria.
Yeah, absolutely. The mitochondria, just real quick guys, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It exists in every single cell in the body and produces ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Big fancy word that's needed for regular muscle contractions and regular functions of the body. And if we don't have good mitochondrial function, it doesn't produce adenosine triphosphate, ATP, we have these problems, right? So
That's
go
right.
ahead, Jim.
And the spark plug to ATP is called CoQ10. It's essentially, if you put a spark plug in your car, it runs. If you take it out, it stops running. So when you get metabolic syndrome, which I'm going to talk about in a second, that CoQ10 is reduced, right? So that the spark...
Is that the same CoQ10 we take in vitamins?
That's right.
How about that?
That's right, right? So, essentially, this is what it is. Oh, by the way, we're going to get into how expensive it costs to have metabolic syndrome. So here's the deal. The number one symptom for metabolic syndrome is increased waist size or central obesity, essentially in the whole trunk waistline area. For instance, the average waistline on a male these days is 41 inches. In 1970, it was 32.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, in 1970, the average male weighed 165 pounds. The average female today weighs 170. All right, so then we have hyperlipidemia, okay? So that's essentially a cascade of an elevation of serum cholesterol, mainly triglycerides, okay? That's fat in the blood, and they create what's called and carry VLDL. VLDL is very dangerous. It creates small particles, which are LDL, which are highly atherogenic, which converts to atherosclerosis, is the narrowing of the arteries, high blood sugars, and hypertension. It's really not salt that causes high blood pressure, it's hypertension and from sugar, excess sugar, mainly high fructose corn syrup, which is in 85% of the 650,000 foods we sell around the country.
It's in everything nowadays. It's horrible.
It's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Sedentary lifestyle, lack of exercise, which will lead all to the following here. I call it the trifecta. Cardiovascular disease. 2,200 people a day die from it. 80 million people have it. That's in America. That's just in America. Kidney disease. 40 million have it.
Those are huge numbers.
That's
big numbers.
As of this morning.
Yeah.
Fatty liver disease. 30 million people have it. The bottom line is essentially this. The end result is lots of doctors, lots of visits, lots of co-pays, lots of medications from big pharmaceuticals, unhappiness, and essentially premature death.
That's not a good outcome if you ask me, guys.
I just don't think anybody's signing up for that. But it's literally the greatest epidemic this country has ever seen in the history of its 240 years. And what we're going to do now is talk about why it's such a bad time to have COVID-19, and I'm going to turn it over to my wife, Dawn.
So now along comes COVID-19. So, there is a correlation between mortality rate and worsening outcomes if you have metabolic syndrome and you are unlucky enough to contract COVID-19. Bottom line is that COVID-19 struck an already unhealthy nation. And there's
Worst
not much,
possible time to get it.
right, not
Worst
much we can do
possible time to get
about
it.
that
Yeah.
now. We can certainly talk about that going forward and into the future. How can you reduce your risk for other illnesses that might be intensified by metabolic syndrome? So there's an increased risk of mortality with COVID syndrome if you have diabetes, hypertension, or obesity. There's many other risk factors that are being examined. The data is changing every single day. We're learning more and more every day about this illness. But what the bottom line is that most people have come to this conclusion, that these are three of the primary risk factors. Age is also a factor, but age is exacerbated by these other conditions. And you're more likely to have some of these conditions if you're older or more aged population. So with type 2 diabetes, there was a U.S. Retrospective study, and what they discovered that type 2 diabetes increased your chance of an ICU stay, it increased your chance for a longer hospital stay, and it significantly increased mortality. In this specific study, they looked at people who had diabetes or uncontrolled hyperglycemia, so formerly diagnosed diabetes or uncontrolled hyperglycemia. And of those, 28.8% from an ICU setting died. So significantly increased mortality.
Dr. Don, let me ask you, I know obesity can be controlled, but what about stuff like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure? Can we do stuff to prevent that or make it go away?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And Jimmy will talk a little bit more about some of those strategies, but all of these illnesses are related, or all these conditions are related to an unhealthy lifestyle. And there are certainly things that we as Americans, we as individuals can do from a preventative standpoint to reduce our chances of having these illnesses. Everybody's putting on the COVID-15, and maybe our mission should be, particularly if you're out of work or have more free time, we should be exercising more, spending more time outdoors, and trying to lose 15. Maybe it should be lose the COVID-15, not gain the COVID-15.
Makes sense to me.
But that's a challenge because obviously people eat when they feel stress, people eat when they feel isolated, they're down and
Yeah.
out. So there's many stressors right now that are occurring, and as Americans, we tend to be over-consumers, we tend to be overeaters, we tend to address our stress with food. So it's a double-edged sword, but it might help us to think, if we think about our risk factors and our risk of dying, it might help us to be more motivated to look at a healthier lifestyle and try to live
Or a
a
family
healthier
member died.
lifestyle.
You know, not just yourself, but, your family members, you need them too.
Right.
We need each other, so.
Absolutely. The support group.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you need that support group. Yep.
So that was a pretty dramatic study. There's been a bunch of other studies. There's a UK study that represented pretty similar numbers. What we're consistently seeing, however, is that if you do have type 2 diabetes, you are at significally greater risk for mortality.
Or even just insulin resistance and pre-diabetes.
Or even just insulin resistance. There's a relationship, though, between these risk factors. I mentioned diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and age. Where it becomes difficult and where it sometimes seems that the data is inconsistent is because it's not a one-to-one correlation. If you're obese and you get COVID, that doesn't automatically mean you're going to die. If you have type 2 diabetes and you get COVID-19, that doesn't mean you're going to die. And it's not really clear at this point how these risk factors interact. And different studies are looking at different outcome measures, and different studies are looking at different risks and how they correlate with each other. But the bottom line is, I think most people at this point in this pandemic feel fairly convinced that these are some of the top risk factors. So the relationship between these risk factors is complex. Some might be stronger than the other depending on what you're measuring. One example that I saw was the risk of diabetes increases with age, but obesity is more common in younger patients. So people say, oh, the elderly are at an increased risk. Well, an elderly person who does not have these other risk factors, hypertension, diabetes, may be less likely to die than a younger person who has more of these risk factors. So age alone, we're saying, oh, everybody over 70 needs to stay home. That's partially true perhaps, but younger people who have these risk factors need to be looking at their risk factors independently and making their own decision about what they need to do to
So what you're
protect
saying is
themselves.
a younger person can be metabolically compromised as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and thinking about, I talked a little bit about how diabetes might be influencing, but obesity is felt to have an increased risk of death related to its pro-inflammatory state.
That's right.
We're learning more and more that COVID may be causing a hyper reaction in terms of inflammation. So it might be related to the already present pro-inflammatory state that obesity causes, as well as respiratory mechanics. If you're obese and you have sleep apnea, you may already have altered respiratory mechanics. It may make your ability to tolerate the COVID infection reduced. So there is again a correlation with increased ICU stays and increased respiratory failure with obesity, and that seems to be a pretty direct correlation.
So just to add something here, being obese is a state of chronic inflammation of the adipose tissue. So if you're obese, you're inflamed. It's essentially a fire going on inside your body. In your circulatory system, it's literally like lava. So that's what obesity does. It causes a cascade of chain reactions, in your body that drive more inflammation, the wrong inflammation into your body, right, Dad?
So you're experiencing biochemical changes that might not be present, increased oxidative stress, all of which contribute to aging and contribute to deterioration of your cells and increase your risk of illnesses.
So mitochondria dysfunction, endothelial dysfunction, and oxidative stress, that's what equals a heart attack right there. So if you have all three going on at the same time, you're at a great increased risk for MI. So now let's talk about the financial impact and how to collapse metabolic syndrome. So it's actually incredible, the financial impact this is having on the country. We spend $3.7 trillion a year on healthcare, and 75% of that entire number is metabolic syndrome related. 80 million people have heart disease, 120 million have type 2 diabetes, 40 million have kidney disease, 30 million have fatty liver disease, 140 million Americans have hypertension, and the most bizarre one is less than 3% of Americans meet the basic criteria of a healthy lifestyle, something just like going for a 20-minute brisk walk. We spend $500 billion a year on type 2 diabetes, which is self-inflicted for the most part and reversible. So people are literally choosing to live with type 2 diabetes. Essentially, all type 2 diabetes is the fastest road to heart disease. Insulin resistance is the quickest way to get there. And I don't think anybody would want to sign up for that. I don't think anybody would want to sign up for lung disease,
I know I don't.
kidney disease, any type of disease. But metabolic syndrome, remember, it's a syndrome, but it causes all these diseases, a cascade effect. It's like an onslaught of things going on in your body. Right, Doc?
That's correct.
So we're going to talk about now how to collapse metabolic syndrome. You can actually do this, but it takes work. You have to change your lifestyle. So I always start with sleep. 75% of Americans just don't sleep good.
It's one of the most important things, right?
Yeah,
In your life. It's one of the most important things.
If you sleep good, everything's good.
Right.
Your attitude's good. Your physique's going to be better. You're going to be more positive. You're not going to be as cranky. You get up earlier and fresh and you're ready to go.
Your overall attitude and outlook on life is better when you sleep.
Sleep is
Yeah.
huge. You know, decreased sleep is another risk factor for metabolic syndrome. So if you get better sleep, that you already start the downturn of getting rid of and collapsing your metabolic syndrome.
It will improve your impulse control, reduce the risk of binge eating.
Right.
What we've seen is that in PET studies for people who were sleep deprived, we then run them through a PET scanner that looks at the activity in the brain, and they're called hypofrontal, which means the frontal lobes are not working as effectively as they typically would. Frontal lobes are important for what we call executive functioning, decision-making, driving. So it's almost like when you look at a brain from somebody who has been sleep deprived, their brain looks like somebody who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They make poor decisions, they're more likely to eat poorly, to not be able to meet these other criteria.
All from lack of sleep.
All from lack of
That's
sleep.
horrible. That's
So
horrible.
sleep can be a very
Sleep's
important,
massive.
very
Yeah.
important pillar in trying to improve your overall lifestyle.
You know, so next we'll go into nutrition. You know, it doesn't matter to us, you know, what you eat as long as it's real food. No processed food, or as little as possible. You want to eliminate high fructose corn syrup, seed oils, and mainly vegetable oils. They cause massive inflammation in the body. The vegetable oil and seed oils actually cause vasoconstriction of the blood vessels, the entire circulatory system.
Chef Jimmy, is olive oil good?
Olive oil is good because it's a different, it's not any type of seed oil. It's
Okay.
monosaturated.
I'm hearing a lot of people talk about avocado oil. What do you think?
Fantastic. Avocado is one of the greatest foods you can eat.
Okay.
Avocado oil, coconut oil.
Coconut oil, yeah, a lot of
These are
people are
less
doing that, yeah.
processed oils.
You know, these are processed oils.
Got it.
And the molecular structure is complete. So if you eat a lot of French fries, you're taking in a lot of vegetable oil. If you eat a lot of potato chips, you're taking in a lot of vegetable oil.
If you eat a lot of baked goods
Right.
that are
Baked
commercially
goods.
made, you're taking in a lot of vegetable oil.
Right.
Salad dressing, commercial salad dressing, almost all first ingredient is canola oil. Even the ones that say olive oil on the label.
Huh.
So
Right.
read carefully.
Interesting.
What you think might be real food may not be real food.
Yeah, one of my best tips to my clients that I work with, you know, to collapse this disease, I do work with people, is my best tip is never put vegetable oil in your body. It's like literally putting castor oil motor oil in your body. It's very
Putting a
damaging.
poison in your body.
It's damaging
Yeah.
to the blood vessels over time. You know, it's going to cause endothelial dysfunction. You know, and your whole circulatory system is going to be compromised because of something like vegetable oil and processed foods. I mean, if you go into a Wawa, a racetrack, I mean, all of these buildings is a roof with a building with nothing but crap food in it. It's not even a gas station anymore.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
I have noticed that.
It's
Yep.
absolutely appalling. You know, what we have to eat in this country. As I said earlier in the video, there's 650,000 groceries sold around the country in markets, and 85% have added sugar, mainly high fructose corn syrup, and seed oils at the same time. Now, if you think about it, if you eat Jif, a peanut butter like Jif, it's not even peanut butter. I mean, look at the first ingredients. Sunflower oil, vegetable oil. You have like 5 or 6 oils, and then you get some peanuts in it. Right? So,
It's horrible.
you know, it's unbelievable. So, and then we're going to go to lift weights and walk 30 minutes a day. I pick weights over walking any day, only because muscle, when you put new muscle on your body, it becomes stronger, and muscle metabolizes fat. So if you can put new muscle on your body, you'll have less body fat. Your metabolic rate will go up.
Prevents injuries also, the more
Prevents
muscle mass
injuries.
you have, yeah.
You know, you start getting more muscle, you start getting a little confident, you start eating a little better. That means you start sleeping a little better, right?
Right. And the goal really should be 150 minutes per week of exercise. That's been the gold standard. But it can be any kind of exercise. It can be walking the dog for 10 minutes now, and then 10 minutes later, and then 10 minutes of something else. It's really all about trying to increase your activity overall.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it does really seem like you have to do a whole lot just to get in moderate shape, right, guys? Just a little bit of effort seems like you
Listen,
would
they
be on
say,
the right
you know,
track.
30 days is a new habit. You know, going into this, think about what we've talked about so far. Why would you want to carry around or self-induce yourself with such a horrible disease? or any of these diseases, you know? It's just, it doesn't make sense to me. You know, so number 4, and again, sleep's number 1, and then you can take these and shuffle them and put them in any order, but at the end of the day, they all count. You know, they all play a part. So we're gonna go here, we're gonna go easy on yourself, right? Nobody does that. We don't even go easy on each other. You know,
That's a
stress.
fact.
Stress is massive. It's massive, you know? People are walking around pent up. They're walking around with a chip on their shoulder. I get it. Everyone's, the uncertainty, but it's very taxing on the endocrine system, right? So when you're producing more cortisol, you're producing more insulin, you're producing more ghrelin.
Adrenaline.
You know, adrenaline. Ghrelin is the hormone that is saying, feed me, I want more food. So the more you get stressed, the body shoots up ghrelin, and then it shoots down cortisol, and you fold again and you eat at Wawa or racetrack.
You're done.
You
You're done
settle,
after
you know, and
that.
then
Yeah.
bingo. So keep in mind, you know, the endocrine system plays a massive part. Once your thyroid, that'll affect your thyroid function, etc., across the board. Right, Dawn?
Absolutely.
And then my number 1, 5, I could actually put 5 number 1. If you're cool to everybody and you're chill, it's all gonna come back to you, man. It's just the way it goes. You know, just be cool. Be cool to everybody. Walk in a coffee shop, be cool. Buy someone a coffee. This is gonna give you discipline, you know, to calm down. You know, being cool is my favorite thing of all time. And I left this for last. The greatest killer in the history of this country, and the federal government says they're legal, is alcohol and cigarettes. So the combination of alcohol and cigarettes has killed as many people as World War II. That's about 60 million people. Just in this country alone,
That's crazy.
right? So what smoking does, it gets stored in adipose tissue and it raises triglycerides, right? So triglycerides are the fat in the blood that are turned into fatty acids, and it creates what's called small particles from VLDL particles, and that's the road to atherosclerosis and heart disease. Nobody wants that. So, you know, in conclusion for me, Fred and Dawn here, I'm just going to say, look, why be a statistic? The country's bleeding right now, you know? Metabolic syndrome is hand over fist the greatest epidemic this country's ever seen. 75% of all healthcare. And people want to know why healthcare is so expensive. That's why it's so expensive.
That is a big number.
You know, so if you
It's a
want
huge
healthcare
number.
to be cheaper, it's a, you know, the only way in my eyes it would affect, if it affects your pocket. If you have to pay more for healthcare, you might start taking care of yourself. But we're not there yet. So in the end, don't be a statistic. Take charge of your health. Your family members need you. They need you and you need them, back and forth. So we're just encouraging people, if you got any underlying conditions, you know, right here, in COVID, the best advice we can do, say to you, is stay at home as much as you can, and when you go out, wear a mask, because you're very vulnerable, and who knows how long this is going to go on, right?
All right, so and I think we can take it a step further. I think as we think about these things, we think about the prospect of COVID-19 potentially being with us for a long time. Many more months, many years,
Just
who
don't know.
knows?
Nobody
Yeah.
knows.
So right now, you may not have the opportunity, the prevention may need to be focused on wearing a mask, social distancing, good hand hygiene, hand sanitizer. But moving forward, there are things that you can do to improve your health on a daily basis. Begin every day. As Jimmy said, try to sleep, try to improve your diet, try to eat real food, try to move a little more. Those are minor steps that one can take on a daily basis that over time may reduce your risk for mortality from this illness or the illness that will come next. We don't know what's coming. None of us expected COVID, and we don't know what's coming next. So those are the steps that one can take now and begin to make some lifestyle changes that in the long run are likely to improve your functioning, your vitality, and your happiness.
Right, and if, if anyone would like any, assistance or help in how to reverse this, Fred, will, at the bottom of the video, he'll have all the details. click subscribe. We're here for the long run. We want to talk about health and wellness, how to get better, how to feel better, how to be more positive, because all of us live a healthy lifestyle and it's paid dividends for us. We love living this lifestyle, and I think you will too.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely, yeah. Great points of topic. It's absolutely wonderful. So if I could take something away from this, I would say just take smaller steps towards just eating a little better, get a little bit more sleep, and just get out and just do more. Just 3 simple things to breaking down this $3.7 trillion a year
Eat less,
cost.
move more.
Yeah, eat less, move more. Real simple, real easy. It's not, some crazy equation with all kinds of unknown variables. It really is simple, and Dr. Picotte and Chef Jimmy have laid it out really, really good for you and given you solid facts on how to fix it. And just be a healthier you. When a hurricane comes, we know when it's coming and when it's leaving. But with COVID-19, we know it came, but we have no idea when it's leaving and how long it's going to stay around for. So we're here it's a marathon from this point on. We're here for the long haul, so we have to protect ourselves. If we could correct these few things that they laid out for us, I think we could live a very long, healthy lifestyle.
And we can make America great, one person at a time.
Absolutely.
Healthy, one person at a time, and then passing that along.
Absolutely. Yep. Perfect. Great. Awesome, guys. Thanks for the presentation. It was super educative, super wonderful, a lot of fantastic facts. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button down below. Leave your comments. They're always welcome. We'll get back to you. And once again, thanks a lot. Dr. Picotte, Dr. Don, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.
watching.